In this video, I'll share with you guys a quick, cheap, and easy method for transferring a sketch or any other image onto your painting surface. Now, I could just take a pencil and draw this design directly onto the panel that I'm actually going to paint it on. The downside to that is I'm going to make mistakes when I'm sketching it out, and I'm going to have to erase and then redo lines. I don't like to draw directly on the panel that I'm working on, especially if I'm going to be painting with transparent colors, because for one, you can't cover the pencil lines and the erased pencil lines very well with transparent paint. The other reason is just to save time. It's far more efficient to just trace this design directly onto the panel. I've already spent time erasing lines and getting everything pretty much just the way I wanted it on this sheet of paper. There's no reason to repeat that process on the panel that I'm going to paint. So a very simple method for transferring this design onto this panel is using Saral transfer paper. This is graphite transfer paper. This stuff works amazingly well. There's no wax or anything, so it's safe for automotive use. I've used it for years. A box of this will last you for years. I've probably had this box for more than 20 years now. You can use sheets more than once. Hopefully the camera will pick this up. Here's a small sheet that I've taken out of this box that you can see all the lines on here. I've used this sheet multiple times, and it's still going to work just fine for this purpose. All you have to do is make sure the graphite side goes towards the panel. You'll lay that over your panel. I made a photocopy of my sketch so that I could leave that one up. I'm going to try to line this up as best I can. I kind of creased the corners of this piece of paper so I could see a little bit better where the panel actually is under this, so I can try to get this as straight as possible. That's probably going to be good. Now all I'm going to do is take a ink pen, a ballpoint pen, and trace over this design, using a little bit of pressure just to make sure that it translates through the graphite paper. I think I've got everything. If you want to, you can tape this up on the top just so that you're able to hinge and open it up and make sure that you got everything traced that you want to trace before you actually remove it. I'm pretty confident I've got everything after just looking at it there, so we can go ahead and take this away. And now we have a really good tracing to work from. The biggest disadvantage to using the Saral paper is you're working with graphite, and obviously you're going to get fingerprints and other smudges on the panel if you're touching it constantly like I was while I was tracing this design. It's a little bit easier if you actually tape it up to where you don't have to hold everything with one finger. It's worse when you use a new sheet. If you cut a brand new sheet of the Saral graphite and start using that, you're going to get more fingerprints in the beginning. Once you've got a sheet that's been used so many times like the one I used, you can see, hopefully the camera picks this up, but around the top area where I was actually holding everything, there's quite a few little smudges. These are easy to remove with just an eraser. You can use an electric eraser, you can use a pencil eraser, you can use a kneaded eraser, or you can use one of the old typewriter erasers if you can still find them. These are getting really hard to find, but this is my favorite eraser to use for this purpose. And the idea here is I want to avoid touching the surface with anything other than the eraser so that I don't put any other smudges into the panel. And you can see the graphite will smudge a little bit when you begin to erase with it. But if you just work it kind of around in circles, you can, for the most part, get all of the graphite erased away. And this doesn't have to be perfect. I don't need to get every little inch of graphite off of here. I just want the big smudges to go away before I actually start painting. And there's a lot of stuff on this actual eraser. That's probably why I'm getting some of the streaking and smudging that I am. Like I said, these erasers are getting very hard to find, so I tend to hold on to them. That looks pretty good. And one thing you notice is we've got eraser shavings all over this panel at this point, and it's very tempting to take your hand and wipe them away like I normally would do. I assume you guys probably would do the same thing, but I don't want to smear or put more smudges on the panel by wiping my hand across the rest of the tracing that I want to keep. So what I'll usually do is just take my airbrush with just air, and that gets rid of the majority of it. And then you can take the little brush on the end of the aggressive pencil eraser or an old paintbrush and kind of wipe the rest of the panel with a brush, just to get the rest of it off. There's still a few streaks up here in this corner. I might hit that one more time with just the kneaded eraser. Probably would have been the better decision to go with in the first place, because this is much cleaner than that typewriter eraser that I was using. And the kneaded eraser is also cleanable. That's why they call it a kneaded eraser, because you can knead it around to clean the residue off. These also don't leave all the little eraser shavings on the panel like the other erasers do. Hopefully this camera is picking the graphite up on the panel better because it's a little bit closer. At this point, I'm pretty happy. This is almost ready for me to actually start painting this skull, but I still have two issues that I want to deal with. The first is when you use graphite to trace your design onto your panel, you don't have the control that you would have had I just drawn this on with a pencil. If I'm using a pencil, I can control the amount of pressure that I'm applying when I'm putting my lines onto the surface. I like to keep things extremely light. That way it makes it very easy to erase with an eraser if I need to erase it. And it also makes it a lot easier to cover your pencil lines with paint in the long run. Obviously, when you're using graphite to trace an image, you need to apply a good amount of pressure to make sure that the graphite makes it onto the surface. So we can't control how dark our lines are on the panel. I know it looks very faint from this camera view, but from the other camera views you can see that these are darker than I would normally like. The other issue that I have is I've still got graphite on here that I can smear. Now some of you might be thinking, well, you'll be airbrushing, so you don't need to even touch the surface. That's true, but a lot of times I like to rest my pinky on the panel in order to steady my hands for airbrush purposes. Sometimes I'll lay the back of my hand onto the panel as well. So I still stand a good chance of smearing or smudging some of the graphite on this panel. I don't want that to happen after I've already started the painting process. So my simple fix for that is to paint over it. I've got Wicked Opaque White mixed up. It's already in the airbrush. I mixed it with about 40 to 50% per volume of 4011 reducer, and I'm just going to spray a couple light coats over the top of this. You'll still be able to see the graphite just fine. So that does two things. It will lock the graphite in place so that I don't have to worry about smudging any of it later, and it will also lighten the graphite up pretty significantly, so that will make it a lot easier for me to cover some of these harsher lines once I begin painting. So hopefully you guys can see through the camera just how subdued all of those graphite traced lines on the panel are now. They're still there. I've still got plenty to work with, but the contrast has been drastically reduced between the white background and the actual graphite lines. The other cool thing about using paint over the graphite is if you've just used a brand new piece of the Saral graphite paper and you've got some pretty heavy smudge marks that you're having a hard time getting out with just an eraser, you can always just paint right back over it too. That's another way that you can erase the smudge marks. I've had to do that in the past before. Again, a sheet that has been used numerous times will not leave near as heavy marks on your painting surface as a brand new sheet will. And it also depends on how much pressure you're actually putting on the panel as well when you're tracing your design. The other cool thing about this is this technique will work on just about any background color. Obviously, I'm working on a white background, but you can do this on almost any color. You can buy the Saral paper in, I know, a white, red, and a blue. They may have other colors as well. And you can use the same technique. So if we were working over a blue background, I could come in with the blue paint and do the exact same thing. I would want to probably use a white Saral graphite to trace the design. Same thing with black. The only thing with black is I would make sure you really over reduce your black before you start spraying over it so you don't completely erase your tracing. But this technique will work with just about any background color. It's a great technique to have in your toolbox. So I'll leave links in the description below where you can get the Saral paper. I hope you guys have got something out of this. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and share. My name's Trevor with Wicked Art Studio, and I'll see you guys next time.